Hi everyone, happy October 2017. How's everybody doing out there today? This is Rachel from Treehouse Knits. Welcome to episode 19. I was up here in my office and just thought I would share with you some of the things I've been working on. It is a rainy fall day here in the beautiful state of Michigan. Maybe I can pan a little bit over. You can see some of my craft room here, but you can look outside the window. I don't know if you can tell. It is a rainy, gloomy day, but I love it. Look at the trees out there. It is full-time fall out my window. That's one of the reasons I call this Treehouse Knits my craft room up here, or my office. I never know what to call it. Is up in the trees. We have a real treehouse in our backyard, which I've posted before on Instagram, but I kind of feel like I'm in my own little indoor treehouse when I'm up here working. So today, well, first of all, how are you guys? What are you working on? Did you enjoy watching all the videos and Instagram pictures coming out of Rhinebeck this past weekend? I kind of felt like I was able to go there. There have been so many fiber events happening all across the world. It has been so fun. It started out watching Shetland Wool Week, and then we were in Berlin online for a festival. Vancouver had the Knit City. I think there was one in Bergen, Norway. The Oslo Knitting Festival just happened. And I've gone to none of them, but I feel like I was sort of part of them via Instagram and YouTube. So that's what's really cool. It connects all of us like-minded individuals somehow. Instead of us kind of having our friends and family curious, why are we so into this particular fiber arts? It's just fun to find you guys. You guys understand my passion. So I really appreciate you finding me here on my channel, and I love to get to know all of you a little bit better. One way to get to know each other a little better is through Ravelry. We have our podcast page, Treehouse Knits, and on there I have an introductory thread where you just tell us where you're at, tell me a little bit about yourself, and I will put your location, just the city, or if you're not even comfortable with that, the state or territory or even country, I put that on our Treehouse Knits map, and you can see how we are just connected from all over the planet. So please go on there, introduce yourself. Also on the Ravelry page, there is a section where you can ask a question, and if I think I can answer it quickly, I will for you on there, and if I think other people might have the same question, I might put it on the podcast. So please ask away any questions you might have. You can find me also on my webpage, thknits.com, and on there you will find the show notes for this episode, as well as links to everywhere else that I'm on social media, and just anything else that I'm doing locally as well. So check that out if you're interested too. So I think that's all the housekeeping I had. Why don't we jump right into my finished objects? We've got finished objects, works in progress. I got a birthday present earlier this month that I want to share with you. It's a present that's going to keep on giving to me for the next year, which is really cool. I have an Instagram person that I wanted to share with you, as well as a website I heard about that might be of interest to you, might be helpful in your knitting. And finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about something I love, and that's children's books, and specifically children's books that have something to do with knitting. And I thought with the holidays coming, we might be looking for certain gifts for our favorite children in the world, and I think it's really neat when you pair a book with something that you've knitted for a child. So I thought I'd share with you the ones that I know of, and then I was going to put a thread as well in the Ravelry podcast page where you could just share what books you have read or you've heard about as well. So we'll talk about that at the end. So that's going to be our episode today. So first of all, my first finished object, if you follow me on Instagram, Treehouse Knits is my name, you will have seen my progress with my Sunset Highway sweater. I love this sweater. I love how it turned out. I followed the pattern exactly the way that Caitlin Hunter designed it. It's so fun. You know, when I first saw the pattern come out, I was immediately drawn to it because a lot of the Indy Dyers that were used in the pattern, and while it's got some typical motifs that you find in stranded color work, I felt like it was kind of rebellious, that it was using not solid colors or heathered colors that really popped, but the pattern itself was using variegated and speckled and tonal yarns. And I don't know, when you're 46 and a mom of 2 teenage boys, you kind of feel cool when you can be a rebel. And that just drew me to the pattern, that I could use stash that I currently had, and that it was something unique, a modern twist, I guess, on a classic sweater. I'll put some pictures here of me in the sweater so you can see it a little bit better. It's a fingering weight sweater. All the information, the details, I've posted on my Ravelry page, so you can kind of check that out. But I learned a lot as I was knitting along. I learned, by the end of it, I got really good at catching floats. And I may make a small video about how I caught my floats. I started out catching floats every 5 stitches, but I found out that I really like catching them at least every 3 stitches. At first, this area up here was really puckered because of the lines of it. It just had a tendency to pucker because it was such a motif that had such straight sections in it. But once I blocked it out, I really didn't block it, I just soaked it and laid it flat, and it all just loosened up. But again, I think this is my first fingering weight sweater, and I love the weight of it. It definitely will not be my last fingering weight sweater, for sure. So I think that's all I really wanted to mention about my Sunset Highway sweater. Then I've been in the mood to do some Selbu style mittens. Patricia P. Fortune, you all know her if you know me. She's about a year ago, I think, she started sharing with us the book with the Selbu mittens, and I just really wanted to give a try on some of these mittens. I had this particular mitten in my queue for the longest time on Ravelry, and I thought I would go ahead and give it a try with just some yarn that I had on hand. I did not use a toothy kind of wool, and having knit this first mitten, now I've realized that I want to use a toothy wool for the next mitten because it will really show off the motif well. In the camera, it's really showing off the motif well. I ended up using some stash yarn. The white yarn is some Anzula that I had in my stash, and the blue yarn is, I don't know if you can see, there's actually pieces of silver in it, so it sparkles as well. That was a yarn I picked up many years ago at the Madrona Fiber Festival in Tacoma, Washington. So I think I did pretty good on my first try. The pattern must have been made in 2010. And on the fly, I thought it'd be easier to make 2018 by just putting 2 little extra stitches in between the 0 rather than 2017. So, you know, I think it's winter 2018 technically, right? I don't know. But you can see some mistakes that I made here on the thumb, just kind of learning how to work that, or how to read that particular chart in the Selbu way. And it was just a great learning. What I like about this pattern, and this pattern is actually called, I have it right here, it's called Winterland. And it is by it's by Wench Rolled. And I'm sure I am pronouncing her name incorrectly. I'll put the name down below. I posted a picture of my mitten on Instagram, and the designer actually said that it looked good and responded to me. That's one of the reasons I love Instagram. It just connects us with people that, I don't know, they're like stars in the knitting universe. When Susan B. Anderson posted something on my Instagram once, it's just cool, that's all. And to have the designer of this mitten actually give me a little thumbs up on the mitten just meant so much to me. But what I really liked, I have second sock syndrome. I always do my socks toe up 2 at a time because of my second sock syndrome. I do one and I never want to finish the second one. And I think I could have the same problem with mittens. I don't think I'd ever want to do 2 at a time mittens with Colorwork. That would just be a little too crazy for me even. But this particular pattern has 2 different motifs. So I can't wait. I'm going to do the church next. And I still have to do a little of the embroidery. See of that smoke coming out of the chimney? That's embroidery. I started my mitten making cuffs like this, but when I finished a cuff and tried to put it on, it was way too tight. So either next time if I made cuffs like that, I would have to go up a size or two in my needles. I don't know, or add more stitches or something. But the pattern gives an alternative cuff, and that was this one, and that fits me much better. So that is my half finished object, Winterland by Wench Rolled. And again, all the information about that particular pattern is on my Ravelry. Okay, so we'll continue now on to more works in progress. I'm part of the Greater Grand Rapids Knitting Guild. We have about 30 women that have signed up for the guild, and we meet once a month, the first Tuesday of the month. If you're in the area and you're interested in joining our little guild, please contact me. But our guild this December is kicking off a knit-along. So I wanted to make the model for the knit-along. We are going to be knitting together the Changing Light shawl. And it looks like this. This is Changing Light. And the designer is Jennifer Wiseman. I actually caught an interview that Christy Glass did with Jennifer Wiseman, and that directed me to this particular pattern. One of the things that she tries to do when she creates a pattern is make it reversible. So when you wear it, if you see the back side of it, it looks great. And I appreciate that. This particular pattern has a really cool back side. So we're knitting the back square, and then we're putting half of it on a holder and then knitting the sides. And it's actually only using three different colorways, I should say, but it really makes it look like more. So of course I have to be a little more difficult, and instead of using just three solid different colorways, I'm going to be using a pack of colors for one colorway that I have, and then I'm going to be using this variegated Monos. It's Allegria Monos in Botanica, and then the end will be this really pretty Malabrigo, just natural color. So these are my colors. And I've gotten as far as that middle square. A thing I really like about this pattern too is some new techniques that I have not ever done before. One of them is the cast on that creates this really cool circle from which the square pops out. She calls that cast on the disappearing loop cast on, and in the pattern, it's a paid for pattern, she gives the directions on how to do it. And I have to admit, it's a really cool cast on, one that I'll look forward to teaching the guild when we get going on this particular project. And the other thing that is going to be interesting with this pattern is when we start doing these sections, we're going to be knitting color across and then sliding the work across our needles and knitting with another color and then sliding it across the needle. So it's not like an I-cord. It's not going to turn into an I-cord because you're going to have two different working yarns coming off the needles, one on each side. So when you slide it, you get the other color. I like different ways to construct things. What it's basically doing is helping you create a really skinny stripe instead of knitting your color across, turning your work, purling back across, and then picking up the next color, knitting across, turning your work, purling back. Instead of giving you 2 rows of color, it's just going to give you 1 row. And yeah, so I really think that's unique too. And I highly recommend this pattern so far. It's a really ingenious, unique pattern. And Jennifer Wiseman's other patterns also look really interesting as well. So if you're interested, check her out on Ravelry. One thing too, as I'm holding the stitches the stitches that I'm holding, instead of putting waste yarn in, I used my Addy cord and the little cord stoppers on the end, and that way it'll be really easy to just pop on my needles and go. I hate picking up stitches that are on yarn. Hate. It's too fiddly. So if there's a reason to buy yourself a set of interchangeable needles, that is enough reason for me. Okay, so that's my changing light. The other work in progress that I have going on, I have not done much because I've decided I do not like the yarn. I have been stalled. I have done so many socks in the past. In the last 2 or 3 months, I have not knit anything on these socks. And I've determined it's because it hurts my hands when I knit on these. These are the socks I'm doing toe up 2 at a time. And it is a cotton sock. The sock is Mylan weight Lana Grossa, and it is 87% cotton, 13% polyester. I thought maybe that stretch that the polyester gives would help me feel like it's more like wool, but it's not, and it actually makes my whole arms hurt up to my elbows. So this sock yarn is injuring me, and I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I might just frog it and give it away to somebody who might be interested in it, because I've really had a hankering for some nice woolly thick socks. And my husband, it is the year of sock knitting for him, and he's only gotten 5 pairs, and I think he was hoping for 12. So I might cut that out. Anyways, that's where we are with my knitting. So I usually don't share a ton of purchases with you on the podcast, but I wanted to share with you this special gift that my husband gave me for my birthday. Here it comes. Yes, it's the Sleeping Bear Yarn Club. This is a yarn club that one of my favorite yarn stores here in Michigan, Wool and Honey, operates. The Sleeping Bear Wool Club it's been going on for several years. I've always seen it when I've gone up north to visit the yarn store and just kind of ooh and ah over the different yarns that are on the counter there. Basically what they do is every month you get a skein of yarn that's an Indy Dyer somewhere in the country that dyes up a skein of yarn that reflects something in nature or something in northern Michigan. So it just makes you feel, northern Michigan is an area where lots of us downstate people go up north every weekend, and there's some beautiful spots up there, and this yarn is basically those spots coming to my doorstep. So the first one that I got was actually by the Kiwi Pop Studio. This is Kilcherman's Golden Russet. And I'm going to assume that Kilcherman's is an apple farm in Michigan. And this is Golden Russet. Really gorgeous color, golds, there's some mauves in there, speckled. That's the yarn I got. For being a 12-month member, I got this really cute charm. And then the Stitch Club, or the stitch marker for the month, is this really pretty marker. I don't know if you can see it very well. I'm moving it around too much. But anyways, you get the gist of it. So every month I'll get a skein of yarn, a stitch marker, and then I'll get to choose one of 3 patterns. And this month I chose this child sweater called Harvester by Alyssa Samantha Taylor. And it's just a basic sweater pattern that you can use with the yarn. So it's just a really neat program. If you haven't gone to Wool and Honey's website, you definitely should. They're a flagship store for Quinns. They've got Brooklyn Tweed up there. They've got just a great curated selection of yarns up in Cedar, Michigan. So do check them out. I also got this really cute tote bag for being a 12-month Yarn of the Month Club member. Okay, so I mentioned before that I wanted to share with you an Instagram person that I think you might be interested in. I love old photos. When I was growing up, my mom always had a storage container or a cabinet full of those old black and white photos of ancestors of ours. And as a kid, we would go up to our cottage in the woods. My mom had this cabinet in the dining room area where it was just full of stacks of old pictures. We'd pull them out. She'd tell me who was who. And it was a neat way to learn about my ancestors, my great-great-grandparents. And when I came across this Instagrammer, she's actually a knitter. She's a beautiful knitter. Check out her Saturate shawl by Orange Knits that she just posted on her Instagram page. Her name on Instagram is Sherrie. I'll put it down below here. Her name is Sherrie. She's from Indiana. And she has a site where she puts on her blog, how do I explain it? I think what she does is she goes to antique stores all around the area and she finds just old photos of people that are for sale and she rescues them. She also has an Instagram name, The Rescued Photo, and that's where she sells some of her photos. And what I love is she actually, if she finds a photo that she's interested in the people in the photo, she will do the research. She will go on Ancestry.com, she will check local records and find out who these people were. And my gosh, a lot of them have such an interesting history and really talk about, it just brings about a varied, these people that she finds have such interesting backgrounds, what brought them to Indiana or Michigan or wherever they lived. A lot of them owned businesses. One of them had relatives in the San Francisco earthquake, and you could read a letter from someone who survived the earthquake and what it was like. It's just a really, really cool Instagram page, and I highly recommend you follow Sherrie. That's Sherrie on Instagram if you're interested. And again, check out her Saturate shawl. I'd never heard of this shawl before. It's by Orange Knits. It's really cool, and it's definitely something now I'm imaginating about, finding a few skeins in my stash and making one of those. So anyway, that is who I wanted to share with you. And the website that I wanted to share with you, I heard on the Knitting Pipeline. Paula mentioned it briefly in one of her last episodes, and that's PrintFriendlycom. Now, a lot of times when you're on Ravelry and you find a pattern that you want to use, it's not a PDF already. The link takes you to a website. And then when you print the website, when you print the pattern, you get all the schmick schmack, you get the advertisements, you get just lots of pictures you don't need. And PrintFriendly.com is really cool. You go to PrintFriendly.com, you type in the URL of the web page that you're wanting, and it puts it into a PDF file and gets rid of all the junk. And it really worked. I tried it on a couple of patterns that I know of on Ravelry like that. Now, if you are an iPhone or an iPad or an Apple user, in the upper left-hand corner, you can click on, it's a bunch of lines, and that makes it read-only. And that's another good way of making kind of a web page or a blog pattern into something that's easier to print. But if you don't have that, definitely try PrintFriendly.com. And then what it does is you can create it into a PDF, save it on your device, and then put it into whatever app you might use if you like to read patterns off of your iPad. So just something for you to think about and to look into if you're interested. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about are some children's books and gift giving for the holidays. I love children's books. I love especially Christmas children's books or winter-oriented Christmas books. I like to keep a basket of them by the Christmas tree every year. I store my children's Christmas books with my Christmas holiday items, and when I pull out our tree and our decorations, I also pull out the books. And so I wanted to share with you some of those books. And books that you can actually give to someone. I've got 2 nephews, for example, and I think it would be really cool to give them one of these books with a knitted item that kind of reflects the book. Of course, the first author that I think of for great children's books, and a lot of them that have knitting items in them, is the author, and I'm sure you know her, Jan Brett. And Jan Brett has done the mitten, which is a mitten, and has done the hat, which is actually a sock that the animals put on as a hat. And there's The Trouble with Trolls. Look at that awesome sweater. Look at those boot cuffs, the mittens, the awesome hat with the big pom-pom. And there's even Gingerbread Baby, which is about a gingerbread man that's baking in the oven, but they take him out too soon and he's a gingerbread baby. And in that there's a character named Maddie, here's Maddie, who has a really cool turtleneck cable red sweater. So how neat would it be to take a pattern and create something? So, and I wanted to show you too, it comes in board books, so if there's a little baby or a toddler, you can also get the board book. But for example, let's start with the mitten. So this story is about a white mitten that, it's actually a Ukrainian folktale that Jan Brett adapted, but it's about a boy named Nicky, and he wanted mittens that were white. And his grandmother thought, why would I knit you white mittens? But okay. She loved him so much that she made them for him. Well, it wasn't long before the mitten fell off. The little boy lost it. And of course, a white mitten in the snow is very, very hard to find. Well, the animals find it, and they look at it as kind of a home for them to get warm in. And the story goes on and on. More and more animals fit into that mitten because Grandma's knitting is so strong and wonderful. And in the end, I just love the last picture where Maddie finds his mitten, but look at how much bigger it is now in the end. But anyway, cute story. My kids really loved it when I read it to them. And what a really cool thing to just make them a pair of mittens and give them the book. And the first pattern mitten that I right away thought of was Susan B. Anderson's Little Waiting for Winter Mittens. This is the pattern. I just made it on I did some hand dyeing a couple years ago, and it's just a really simple pattern with a really nice thumb, and I thought it would be really neat to make 2 mittens and then connect the 2 mittens with an I-cord so that my little nephew could maybe put it, you know, in the back of his jacket, the string, and then wear the mittens, and then he wouldn't lose his mittens. So that's one idea. If you want to get a little more creative, you could always get creative with this Susan B. Anderson pattern. You can find it on Ravelry. Again, it's Little Waiting for Winter Mittens. There's a Waiting for Winter Mittens that's adult size, but the little version is for kids. And if you know what your stitch count is in the round, you could always find a motif that's divisible by that stitch count. You can go online, like let's say I have let's say I have 36 stitches in the round. You could find a 6-stitch pattern motif and just plop it right in there if you're a stranded colorwork knitter. You can find a lot of motifs if you just Google 6-stitch motif for stranded knitting, and you get all kinds of examples. So that's one way. You could customize it in any way you want. And then another idea, I don't know if you've ever seen this fabulous book, The Big Book of Mittens by Jorid Lindvik. And in the back, she has some wonderful little sized mittens. If you want to do some great color work, she's got tiger cub, and then this baby elephant. And what I really love about the book is your own design section, where she gives you the framework for the mitten pattern, and then you can plug in any of these motifs into them. So get creative with your mittens and just have a lot of fun. And what a great gift idea for your little loved one for the holidays. So check out Jan Brett for sure. Again, if you want to make hats, the hat is actually a sock. You could make socks for your loved one, but hats, a great, great book for hats. I'm all about Susan B. Anderson today, but she's got a great, we've all seen this itty bitty hat book. This was the first knitting book I think I ever purchased for myself, and in it are just basic hat patterns in the beginning. There's also some more elaborate hats, but in the beginning she's got just a basic hat using 3 different weights of yarn. This is a worsted weight that I made. I plugged in the motif, and there you go. You got a little hat. I couldn't even tell you what yarn I used, but this was one of my first stranded Colorwork patterns that I ever did. Pair this with one of those cute hat books and you've got yourself a really nice gift. Oh, you know what? Back to The Trouble with Trolls. Oh, I love this book. And you know, if you look at Jan Brett's artwork, isn't that cool? I mean, she's got all kinds of motifs in her artwork as frames. But I was looking at Maddie's outfit here, and look at how she has those cuffs, those knitted cuffs over her boots. Or even her boots kind of remind me of those mucklucks that, Andrea Mowry has a muckluck pattern. And, oh, who else has a muckluck? Oh, Tin Can Knits has a great muckluck pattern. That would go so well, too, with a gift like this. Or if you want to be really creative, get yourself a green sweater and put in those heart motifs. But oh, this is just, the artwork is just really stunning in all these Jan Brett books, and such great inspiration for us knitters. I mean, every single page has different motifs around it. Why couldn't you use those motifs, you know? Okay, so those are my, I guess, my Jan Brett books and Susan B. Anderson and the Mitten book. And then I have 3 books that have nothing to do with the holidays, but they have everything to do with knitting. The first book I wanted to share with you, No Roses for Harry. Oh my gosh, well, I guess if you had a little grand dog in your life and you wanted to knit him a sweater, this would be the perfect book to go with it. This is a story about a little dog who gets a sweater from Grandma for Christmas that she knit for him, but the sweater has roses on it, and Harry is not into this sweater at all. So he just does not want to wear it, but Grandma comes for a visit, so the little boy and girl in the story, I think, make sure that they put his sweater on so Grandma sees that they're wearing it, and oh, he just feels so uncomfortable in this sweater. But what happens is he realizes one day, when he's outside, that there's a little loose thread in his sweater, and he kind of picks at it, and all of a sudden a bird comes and picks at that thread there, and it unravels his sweater. It's just so cute how the bird just takes off with all the yarn from his sweater, and Harry just jumps for joy. Well, Grandma arrives, and they're like, where's Harry's sweater? And they can't find Harry's sweater anywhere, and Harry's kind of sitting in the background wondering, how am I going to get away with this? Well, Grandma and the kids decide to take Harry for a walk, and what do they encounter on their walk but this incredible bird's nest with Harry's yarn in it. And I love it because, oh, Grandma and the kids think Harry is just the best dog for sharing his sweater with the birds. And as a reward for Christmas, Harry got a present from Grandma, and it was a new sweater. And he really likes this one. What a cute book, right? Right. So check that one out if you're interested. Another book that I think is really cute, and you could actually, Amos is a sheep, so you could actually do a knitted sheep, maybe, oh, like Susan Anderson's. Oh, hold that thought, I'll be right back. I've got one right here. I know I've showed it to you in other podcasts. You could do like a sheep in a sweater, like this one. It's called Amos's Sweater. It's a story about a sheep who it's a farm lady, and that sheep is always giving the farm lady his fleece, and she's always knitting it up. And then he ends up cold and all skinny and no fleece. And he sees people walking around with sweaters made out of his fleece. And so in the story, she ends up making a sweater using Amos's wool for, I believe, her husband. But look at the poor little Amos. He's just been shorn, and there's this sweater that she made for somebody else using his wool. Well, in the end, Amos gets a little frisky and he steals the sweater, and he ends up wearing the sweater made from his fleece. And it's just a fun, kind of fast-paced story. And in the end, the farmer says, you know, Hattie, Amos is old. And maybe Amos is cold. And maybe Amos is tired of giving away all his wool. So they let him keep his sweater in the end. And there he is with the sweater with his wool. So, cute story, helps kids understand where their wool comes from, and fun sweater-oriented story to read. Check out Amos's Sweater by Janet Lunn and Kim LaFave. Okay, the last book that I want to share with you it's one of my favorites. It's called The Mitten Tree, and it's a story about an older woman who lives near a bus stop, and there's a big tree by the bus stop, and she sees a little boy waiting for the bus, and he doesn't have any mittens. And so she knits him up a pair of mittens, puts them on the tree, and then when the little boy comes to wait at the bus stop in the cold, he sees the mittens and he wears them. And it's just a story about giving. Here's the little lady that lives near the bus stop, and it says her children were all grown up and moved away, and she remembered mornings when she would walk them to the blue spruce tree where they waited for the school bus. And it just talks about, I just love the artwork in here. She saw that little boy, and so one day she decided to pull out all her old wool and start knitting up some mittens. She worked really hard on the mittens. And she had this basket full of mittens that she knit, and she hung them on every tree branch. Here's what it looks like when the kids arrive to the bus stop, and they're curious who's placing mittens on the blue spruce tree. And in the end, there's the kids on the bus, nice and warm with their new mittens. And in the end, someone finds out that she's the one that left the mittens and left her a whole basket full of yarn on her doorstep. It's just a really, really sweet book. Sarah doesn't know who the yarn is from. The children still don't know who the mittens are from, but someone must, is how it ends. And how fun to make some Fair Isle or some stranded colorwork mittens and pair it with this book. What a great holiday gift for that special child in your life. So it's The Mitten Tree by Candace Christensen, and it's illustrated by Elaine Greenstein. So there you have it. I would love to know if you know of any great children's books that kind of go along these themes that you'd like to share with the rest of us. Go to the Treehouse Knits podcast page on Ravelry and check out the thread there, and let's start sharing some ideas. So I think we've done it. We've come to the end of our episode 19. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a little bit something out of it. I'm envisioning you all out there knitting away in your warm homes and just enjoying your time. And I appreciate you spending some time with me. So have a great week, and we'll see you again on the next episode of Treehouse Knits. Bye.